Hello, I'm Sam Upton, and today I'm going to be sort of refuting the claims of my opponent Ian Rowe, mainly that net neutrality would have severe consequences for America, not in the intention of his argument, but rather in the fact that I believe he failed to properly state it or really express it at all. My main issue with this speech is that the covering of the GPI and who that was, as well as the usage of any evidence whatsoever, was lacking to say the least. And this ended up painting an incorrect picture as to both what net neutrality is and sort of the possible damages from removing it and the stances of those who oppose it. First off, who is a GPI? The original presentation never really says, well, a GPI is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. He was originally unanimously voted into the FCC in 2012 after being nominated by then President Barack Obama and was then promoted under President Trump. This is information that my opponent does not provide, which effectively paints a GPI as not really a person, especially not one holding, who would hold some bearing on this issue and have some weight to what they're saying because he was there to actually see all this happen and has some reason to say what he does, say what he says. This is my opponent then goes on to quote a GPI stating the private sector invested over $1.5 trillion to build out fixed and mobile networks throughout the United States under Title 11, which is net neutrality. Investment has declined by billions of dollars. He criticizes, my opponent criticizes PI for not offering any examples of why repealing net neutrality would fix that stuff, except that's the evidence that investment went down following that Title 11 being enacted. It's just right there. And then in the quote that was in the statement that was the quote was taken from, Mr. Pai then goes on to talk about how regulations have impeded innovation in Wi-Fi technology and how he's been talking to small wireless companies across America that they had, and finding that they have had to pay more under net neutrality than they had prior. All of this, I must add, is found in the sources cited by my opponent, namely Reed, FCC Chairman, and GPI's statement on killing net neutrality by The Verge. Secondly, no solid information is actually provided for why repealing net neutrality would do any of the bad things my opponent says it would. For the claims regarding small businesses being snuffed out, small businesses online were not suffering in 2014 and before. In fact, according to an article by Inc. at the time, online stores and businesses were thriving in 2014. The closest my opponent gets to evidence is a vague mention of a tweet by California Congressman Ro Khanna showing what is sort of like a scary image from a Portuguese internet provider Mio, which shows sort of like different bundles for specific apps on phones, and sort of like the belief then that they're charging people piecemeal for their different parts of the internet. This was found to be completely not true. What it actually was that it was just a thing where the company would provide, would allow you to have unlimited data for certain things, or actually extra data for certain things that wouldn't come into your normal data if in case you really like YouTube or whatever, and sort of so you don't have to change your whole plan. There is sort of a problem with this, in that it means that only the things that are big and can afford to be put on these bundles are really what's being seen, but that's not the stance my opponent takes, and that really creates a problem with the argument. And on sort of like the thing of, or to go more into companies doing whatever they want, in the past, companies have been shot down for their plans on exploiting people. In 2012, AT&T tried to limit FaceTime usage and was shot down for it. Providers in Morocco tried to block voice over services in 2015. That was also stopped simply by people complaining. Neither of these were done with the need of net neutrality. And sort of in conclusion, my opponent, Mr. Rose's speech is problematic. It says a lot but gives little and demonstrates an interest in creating an unsympathetic villain through a cheap pie who wants to turn the world into the setting of a dystopian novel for no apparent reason. That isn't to say that repealing net neutrality wouldn't have consequences. It would. It's just the consequences are not what my opponent stated, and the evidence provided doesn't even really point towards those consequences. Thank you.
All right, well, you basically are attacking the narrative that the advocate is presenting about the villain of Edgy Pie, and then that there are some harmful consequences of an unregulated internet. I think that you did a pretty good job suggesting that Pi is not necessarily the boogeyman that the advocate portrays. In fact, you give it a context that suggests that this is somebody who has been there for a period of time, observed what's going on, is making a decision, has been supported in their decision by the FCC on those particular points. I think that's fine. You present some additional information from the source that the advocate used that suggested that regulatory actions are the things that have produced this dry up of investment. And when the advocate presses for a lack of example there, you in essence say, well, that's exactly the evidence that is in fact proving that particular point. On the second point, I thought that's the right answer. I mean, that addresses that particular point. Now, on the question of whether or not there's going to be negative consequences for net neutrality, it sounds almost like you would like to make an argument in favor of net neutrality, but you're stepping back from doing so, which is okay, but I'd be careful about suggesting that there are other reasons. I think the main argument is that the advocate failed to demonstrate the point that they're presenting and suggesting, look, it was thriving before net neutrality. There's no reason to believe that it wouldn't continue to thrive currently. You've got the one example that the advocate used of the Portuguese bundling. I think that I understood the challenge that you're making, suggesting that this was really a different kind of package. It was not suggested that this was going to replace the internet access that people in Portugal had with just piecemeal sorts of things. It was an attempt to offer some additional advantage to people on their data plans. You don't really give a source on that, and I'm sure that you got that information someplace, so that's one of those things that you want to be sourcing. And then, like I said, I think you had a couple of good examples. The advocate cited examples of Morocco and AT&T when they attempted to do things, and they got shot down for doing those things, and there was no net neutrality to shoot those things down. They were shot down for other reasons that were problematic, and I think your argument comes down to we don't need net neutrality in order to protect the internet, and that there are problems with net neutrality that AJ Pye has suggested in the first point that you think do exist. Leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.